Next is our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. I just had a hallmark moment here watching the students. Again, not only did they come out on a day that was a holiday for them, but hearing their statements here as they talked about the heart of Corley was very touching to me, because this school is named for H.E. Hap Corley, who actually hired me as an administrator many years ago, and with whom I had the privilege of working for so many years. And he was such a role model and mentor for me, and knew his lovely wife, who is also now deceased, and actually taught two of his daughters in Sunday school, and have kept up with a couple of them through the years. And nothing could have been more appropriate, and nothing would have meant any more to him than having seen these students talk this evening. I know that he would be very honored to this very day that this district chose to honor him by naming this facility after him, and of the good work that continues to be done here in the school that is named for him. As you have read in the paper in the past several days, we're hitting that season where test scores are becoming publicized. And last week, it was the SAT test scores, and you will recall that our district students performed very well once again, and scoring well above the national average, and leading the Midlands in terms of our performance on our students' performance on that particular test. And I guess I've lost track of time. I don't know if it's this week or next week. We'll have the first of the two report cards that schools have been getting. The first one is it this week or next week? Sometime. It's coming up next week. It's when the first one is really our federal accountability rating, which is given, it's called the ESA rating, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1964, and their criteria differs somewhat from the state criteria, and so the state report card will come out a little bit after the federal one. But I think you'll be very pleased with how well our district performed on the federal accountability report. And again, all that information is embargoed at the moment, but will become public next week, we think. And so tonight, we know that there's probably as much interest, right now there's interest about two topics in particular. One is what's happening with teacher evaluation at the state level. And that's of extreme interest to our teachers and all of us in education. And so that's a really hot button topic. And the other one is student assessment, because, of course, much of what happens with teacher evaluation now will be tied to what happens with how students perform on test. And it's a kind of a very strange and bizarre time, because right now we don't know what the instrument will be that our students will take in the spring, on which students' work will be used to judge the performance of their teachers. So it's we're kind of in the twilight zone, I guess. But there are a couple of instruments that we do know about that we'll be using this year. And so we have asked Missy Wall-Mitchell, who's our Director of Accountability and Evaluation, to share with you what we know about the known student assessment instruments at this point in time. So, Missy Wall-Mitchell.
Thank you. And I have Dr. Lace Zachary, our District Test Coordinator, will be giving us some details on those assessments. I just want to sort of brief you on where we are, or where we think we are, where we were, I don't know how to explain it, on the types of assessments and where we're going. This is a very unique situation. I've never seen anything like this before, actually, with the just the flux and the decisions that are not made based on these other calendar things that are making evaluations and test scores and things like that. I will say the good news is the students probably won't notice a difference. They'll get a test and they'll take it and they'll do great, just like they always have. It's all this other stuff in the background that have the grown-ups maybe a little bit of heartburn, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. I'm going to tell you about some of the different assessments we have here, just go over those and how these other ones are fitting into this puzzle piece. They're different, like from a student's point of view, you get some questions you answer. And so how that's used, how the test is developed sometimes makes a difference. And there's called summative assessments and formative assessments. Those are the two big pieces that we use in educational measurement. And there's an interim assessment is really can be the fish or fowl between the two. The summative assessment is, or the analogy up here is that when the cook tastes the soup, that's the formative assessment, and when the customer tastes the soup, that's the summative assessment. So the formative is where that point classroom measures what's going on, what do I need to tweak, how is that going along. Summative is at the end. And it's what happened, what do we do with that. Interims can be almost a little bit of both. And the example of that here is MAP. We give it 3 times a year. It can be summarized to the class or school level. We use it to inform instruction. So it's not that, like I said, that pulse point or the soup that's already left the kitchen. Some of the analogies, I think some people say autopsy versus diagnosis, but I like the soup analogy better. We are going to continue to do MAP. We will have summative assessments that will come from the state. Those are usually specified. And then the formative assessments go on every day in quality teaching, and the data team initiative that our district is doing is using those results to help improve instruction as well. So, let's see if the key points of where we are now is Act 200 was passed last spring, and it requires a new summative assessment that is anything but smarter balanced. It even specifically says that students will not take the smarter balanced assessment, and the state also withdrew from the consortia. The state is also currently reviewing standards for ELA and math, but currently the state adopted standards are the Common Core. So in that Act 200, it says that the State Budget and Control Board is assigned the responsibility for identifying a new test, that summative assessment. And they did that in part, I think, because of the timeline. Developing an RFP and going through review processes and things like that is a very lengthy process, and having it sort of overseen by the Director of the Budget and Control Board would certainly put that on the fast track. And then on June 19th, Aspire, which is a test developed by ACT, was awarded, and then the bid was challenged last week. It's another testing company, a week before last, and so it has been put on hold. So right now we don't know what test we will have this spring. It's right now through the procurement process, determined by the state procurement process. They are reviewing, I guess, the proposal and the procedures that went through on that, and then they'll make a determination. So right now, we don't know what we'll have. But at one point, they picked Aspire. That would be, the law is written that whatever test is chosen will be paper this year. It has to be paper in the spring. And the option of paper or computer next in year 2, and then completely computer administered in year 3. We think our district is ready to do that. We could do computers in the spring if we wanted to, but that's not an option, so we won't do it. There's no changes in the assessments that we currently do, and like I said, MAP is still going on. DIBBLES, which is a K-1 reading assessment we give 3 times a year to help with our screening for response to intervention. The PSAT, the SAT, the ACT, we administer the PSAT. Students can choose, and many do, to choose those other college-bound tests. The assessment for gifted and talented identification hasn't changed. The end-of-course tests will continue to be the same. And here's a thing that sort of is a little confusing. When we don't have PASS anymore, we don't have ELA or math. That's going to be the new test to be determined later, but we will have science and social studies. And so that will be either electronic or paper. It will not be third grade. In the past, some of the students took either science or social studies. For this year, as the law is written, all 4th through 8th graders will take science and social studies pass. And then we also have other assessments like English language learners, advanced placement, and things like that. So, like I said, what we're not giving is the pass ELA in math or writing. And then HSAP is no longer here. The last test was last summer. It's no longer required for a diploma, and part of an Act 155 says students who had met all the Carnegie requirements previously, but did not receive a state diploma because of not passing the HSAP, have the opportunity to petition for a diploma, and we've had, I don't know, about a couple dozen students that will now receiving a diploma, so that's pretty good. That's where we're going through, and that option will be open for about another year. That students that have previously, from the 80s up through last year, can petition for a state diploma. So, all right, I told you a lot of things that didn't change. I spent some time on things that we don't know what to do, but we do have a couple tests that have been determined, and they are determined in law, and Dr. Zachary, who is our district test coordinator, will tell us a little bit more about these. And I want to say I'm not worried, because if there's anybody in the state that can pull this off, it's her. I mean it. I mean, it's like the duck in the water, you know, that things smoothly. So we're in good shape as we could expect to be because of her. So I want to give her thanks for that.
Good evening. I hope everybody can hear me. Okay, that's good. Some of the new assessments that we have right now is Circle, and in fact, we are almost done with that test administration. It's for pre-K and kindergarten. And our work keys will be for grade 11, that's in the spring. As Missy had said, we are supposed to have a summative assessment, which we don't know exactly what test they are going to select and exactly when it's going to be administered. So as soon as we have the information, we'll provide to the schools. And I have one of my test coordinators sitting right there, so I know this is anxiety, not knowing what is coming about, but we'll do the best we can. Let's see for me, I think. All right, so the first one, which is for the elementary schools, is called Circle, and it's basically MS class. Is the same application that we use for DIBELS. So some of you, if you have students, you know, in our district in elementary schools, that you will be familiar with that. The whole process was a little bit, how do I say, not quite organized, but we got it through, and we didn't hear any complaints from the teachers, so I was happy about it. The whole test came about, again, because I think they like to write a bunch of laws and requirements, and we just have to do it. So just, you know, not want to take too much of your time, but I thought maybe you would like to have the, you know, the place where you can locate where the information, the requirements are coming from. But basically, Read to Succeed is one of the acts that prompt, you know, the whole administration. But I went ahead and listed all the information there for you. So you may see, well, why are we doing this? Why do we have to do? Well, required by law, and they also wrote into the law that it has to be administered by the 45th day of instruction. And our 45th day of instruction is October 22nd, so we're almost done. She's staying over there. HE call is done. And this assessment, again, is designed for 4- and 5-year-old students. And they do offer some testing accommodations, and the requirement is really to test all students. And if you want to know, you know, how we're going to do this, well, it's a one-on-one administration by the student's regular classroom teacher. It takes between 20 to 30 minutes, you know, just depending on the student. Sometimes you need a little bit of prep time. And again, I mentioned to you, you know, we need to be done by October 22nd. And this is just to let you know what the assessment is measuring. As you can see On the top, this really is part of the instruction that teachers are providing to pre-K and kindergarten. The teachers, we have not heard any complaints. They seem to understand. They thought the test was easy to administer. And for the teacher side is a computer test. So basically, they show information to the students, and the students will answer that. Now, the second portion where there are observations involved, that is something that the teacher will respond based on what they have observed from the students, and also some sample writing. And this is an assessment that is required by the state for the beginning of the year, so that the teachers will see how the students are performing, and they can provide some modified instruction and provide additional resources. But also give the teachers the option to administer the test again at the end of the year, so that they will be able to see the progress of the students in the beginning and the end. And you might want to know, how about the results? Well, the state had decided that after the beginning of the year administration, they will generate some reports. We believe they should arrive sometime in January, and so that information will be provided to parents. However, the teachers can share the score with parents. And if you wanted to know, it's a formative assessment, and how are the schools using this? They are using to identify instructional needs and activities to help the students. All right, so that was circle. Now we move from elementary to high school. So we are going into WorkKeys. And WorkKeys is basically a workforce skills assessment. We have additional states that had administered this before. Our neighbor, North Carolina, they have done for a little bit. I think it may be 2 or 3 years. I'm not exactly sure. So we are right now under our growing pains, trying to get this going. But again, you're asking, why are we doing this? So here comes the law. So that's Act 155. And they wrote specifically, if you would please look at the last sentence. So that's why we are doing WorkKeys. And they also decided the assessment would be administered to grade 11. This is just to give you a little bit of the background. And I think if you just look at the first sentence, like real world skills. Basically what ACT is telling us is that they had done a lot of research with companies, business, different fields of work, and trying to find out what are some of the skills, what do you need, what do they need to know when they come here, and to be successful. So the assessment has pretty much 3 components, which is the math, reading for information, and locating information. And we had a long presentation this morning from ACT, so we learned a lot about the test. And there are some things that South Carolina is not using yet. However, I think because we are going to do an assessment, to pretty much all grade 11 students in our state, things will change. But you might ask, okay, so what kind of scores, how are they using? So I decided to use this last score, but I also call your attention to, let me see if this is going to work, right here. We were informed that this is a very difficult test. It was designed that way. That's what they are looking, to do. And in fact, they even told us if you have students scoring at the highest level, you might consider giving them an award. And I said, okay, so I'm ready for Lexington 5 to have a lot of students at the last level. So we're going to work real hard. But what business generally look for are those 2 levels here, the silver and the gold. In fact, for those students that are scoring on the silver level, they will take priority in hiring. And that's, again, not my words, but the words that we heard this morning from ACT. The test will be in the spring. They have also provided us another application that is like an instructional piece, so we hope that will help the schools. But this is just to give you an overview of what's coming, for our high school students. And we were informed that each component or each test, like the math, the reading, and locating information, it takes about 30 minutes to be completed. And it's also sort of an adaptive test. So some students may be able to complete the test, faster, and some will need the 30 minutes. And now we have our next steps.
Like I said, as long as we have Dr. Zachary coordinating our testing program, I think we are in as good shape as we could possibly be. So that's a good thing to know. She's anxiously waiting on the summative assessment to be determined. I expect that I don't know when it will be, but it will. Usually these challenges are resolved rather quickly. And then we'll begin training for those tests. And then what's going to be going on, Dr. Hefner mentioned the ESEA that is coming out next week. That's part of the AYP and No Child Left Behind, and that's some of the thing that's causing all that angst of we're required by law to have the ESEA ratings, and we need a test to do that measures college and career readiness, and it's almost one of those perfect storm things that are coming along right now. But we'll be developing a new accountability system as well. So you see the ESEA, or what used to be the No Child Left Behind, AYP. That'll come out next week. In November, you'll get the state report cards, and this is based on last year's data. So that's based on pass and HSAP and graduation rate, the things that you're used to. And then we will not have, I gotta make sure I say this right, part of the law, the Education Oversight Committee will still do a report card, but they will not do report card ratings for 2 years. Part of that is as we transition between standards and assessments and things like that. And then also the point is to try to develop one single unitary accountability system that meets state and federal requirements. So we will, like I said, we'll have some. As of today, we will have report cards in a year from now, but maybe not that. I think what's just went out of my head, you'd think I'd know this. What is it? Excellent, good. Those ratings there, the ratings and growth. So that's pretty much where we are right now. There's also, I think, a lot of discussion about teacher evaluation instruments and using this test. And once again, we don't know what test that is or whether it would be an appropriate measure in the first place. But those are more pieces that are tied to what is going on right now. And there are no answers, honestly. So. Or do you have any questions?
I do. Actually, I have a few. That was a wonderful report, Dr. Zachary and Missy. I'm so used to saying Missy Wall Mitchell. Let's back it up just a minute. You talked about the teacher evaluations, and as Dr. Hefner mentioned, there is certainly and understandably a lot of angst among our teachers about this evaluation. Am I understanding this is 100% go for the evaluation? The teachers will be evaluated based on tests. It's just that we don't know what test?
Defer to Dr. Bain.
The short answer is we don't know.
We don't know if they'll...
We don't know if this is a go for tying the test scores to teacher evaluations. There will be some version of that, I think, but we need to be sure that we have a valid and reliable measure of student test scores that could be attributed to an individual teacher's evaluation.
Who is making that determination, and when do we expect to know?
The state board is looking at the guidelines that are being proposed at this point, and we have an advisory team. So it is part of a federal mandate for the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that we have asked for the waiver. Dr. Zais did ask last week, 2 weeks ago, for a delay in the value-add measures for looking at student growth as part of teacher evaluation. So we've pushed it a little bit forward. I don't know when we'll have an answer, if we definitely have the delay or not.
And so does our school district, do we have any input into this
Yes.
matter?
I'm on the advisory team.
Very good, very good.
We have a lot of input.
Okay, and I do know, we've heard that a lot of teachers are very, have a lot of understandable concerns.
Yes, they're anxious.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is you talked about the state diploma and students could petition for the, prior to this year. How do those students who did not pass that test, how do they know that they can petition? You mentioned that there was a deadline.
Well, the deadline is December 2015, a year and a half from now. It's been, and it's not just South District 5, it's all the Midlands. So there have been newspaper and radio ads. I think there's something on the website. I'm sure there's a...
We put that information out as many different ways as we can. There's a couple articles in the state paper about Act 155, and it must be working. We had about 20 students. We're doing this in 4 phases. About 20 students received their diplomas. In fact, we just received the first set of diplomas this week. And so we'll do another set at the end of November and then another set at the end of February, and we'll wrap it up next year. So the word's getting out. And I think the guidance counselors, I think Bob Taylor up, but the guidance counselors are reaching out to their recent graduates as well, letting them know about it. And adult ed also is part of that.
Okay. And you mentioned when you were talking about the work keys that if the student, I guess it's the graduate, qualifies at silver level, I can't remember that second category, that they would get priority in hiring. How is it that, and I'm assuming there's some, I think I read that there was some designation. Tell me how that works. How does the employer know that the student has this designation?
The test was designed with input from companies, so basically the employers will determine what level they accept. So what ACT was telling us is that what they call average and above, they will accept. What is the test is measuring is, do you have the ability to understand information, to read, plans? Do you have the ability to work on the computer, to do mathematical, equations? Also, do you have the ability to interact with others? Do you have the ability to speak publicly, work in groups? So it's measuring those things. The presentation that we had today, they really were addressing that because of the technology age and the Y generation, there is a lot of isolation in texting. And when you come to a work environment, as we are working right now, the only way that they would know is that you text me and I text you back. So in a work environment, this may not work for all companies. There are some companies that, they have used that, Amazon and some of the other ones, that's fine, you can work in isolation. But it's still, depending on the level of the corporation, we are going to need additional skills. Now, I need to also say that this is something that is growing, and not all the business in South Carolina currently are accepting that. We have the workforce commissioner that is working in expanding and really lobbying for companies to recognize and accept this more and more. And that's what I was trying to say as we are coming about with the test administration. It will become public. So they are hoping that the change they saw in North Carolina, they will see in South Carolina. One of the recommendations that they mentioned this morning is that the students will include the WorkKeys score on their resume when they are sending to the companies. Now, if you score at the lowest level, that might be a little bit of a problem, but if we know that, will help our students. So I hope this address your question.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought on the work keys, that it has the ability to sort of differentiate among students, that students can indicate that they scored extremely well in a particular area, and so depending on the job for which they're applying, the employer may be looking for specific sub-skills rather than just a total skill. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The South Carolina is providing us what they call the Career Ready 101. And the Career Ready is pretty much, if I may, the whole umbrella.
It's everything.
Of the instructional piece. And what Dr. Hefner is talking about is the pre-test. And they also have a piece which the key train, and additional things like soft skills. But it also does a career inventory. But it's not a career inventory as we think about. It's attached to some academic skills. For instance, if you would like to be a nurse, there are some things that you need to know and to do in ELA and math, and also with technology. So we're trying to address that piece.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. I did want to ask, or just mention something about the SAT. I appreciate that very much. Once again, our school district did do a wonderful job with our SAT scores. What really stands out is that we had the highest percentage of students of any non-magnet, taking the test of any non-magnet school district in the state. And that is a constant for us. It truly is. We just continue. And just to give you an idea, we tested 78% of our students, 78 out of 10. The next highest, which was York 4, tested 70%. Lexington 1 at 57%. Anderson 1, which came in second. York came in first. Anderson 1 at 54%, and Barnwell 45 at 35%. So we're not really comparing apples to apples
correct.
there. And I do think that it's real testament to all of our high schools that we encourage that many students to take the SAT, however they may use it. And I think it just is amazing. Give a lot of credit to our teachers, our administration, families for this just continued line of success.
Thank you very much. And again, I would just reemphasize what has been said earlier. No matter what instruments are chosen, I have confidence that our students will perform well because our teachers are teaching and our students are doing an incredible job of learning, and so I'm confident we'll do well no matter what. Our next report is from our Office of Design and Construction. Have our monthly update from Keith McAllister of our staff and Chris Whitley from our construction manager, Cumming.
Thank you, Dr. Hester, members of the board. Again, appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on the construction projects throughout the district. We'll start with Chapin High School. As you know, we've already turned over the gymnasium and the fine arts building. We do have punch list work ongoing in that building. Hanson Brick has been back out to Chapin, and they have stained a good portion of the brick on the exterior of the building. There's some brick that the mason needs to come back and re-clean, and in some instances clean for the first time. So we're waiting on them to do that. And once that's complete, we'll bring Hanson back in to complete the balance of the brick staining. We turned over the new kitchen and cafeteria. That's now being utilized by the school. I don't know how many of you have been up there to see it, but I think it turned out to be a really nice space. The kitchen, the serving line, and picture on the left is the first day that they were using the cafeteria. And then, of course, the lobby is out in front of the cafeteria. So we've now moved into the final phase at Chapin High School. So they're beginning to work in there. That's renovating the existing cafeteria and kitchen, and that would be turned into classroom type spaces. Yes, correct. But he said the old weight room would be turned into a cheerleader and wrestling room as part of that final phase. Any questions or changes?
Ms. Lovelace?
Mr. Whitley, you've been talking about staining the brick. Can you explain to the public why some of the bricks are being stained?
There was some darker shade brick that got mixed in as part of that building. And we obviously notified the manufacturer, and the manufacturer has offered to give their same brick warranty to their staining, which is a 100-year warranty basically, to come in and correct those with a stain versus cutting all of those brick out and replacing it, which I think is the right thing in terms of not messing with the integrity of the brick wall. Yes, and all the staining is at Hanson Brick at their expense in the correction of those colors.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, thank you for asking that question, Ms. Lovelace. And I do think it's important also to note that you recognize you were the first one brought it to our attention, and the board was very insistent on making sure that Chapin just turns out wonderful down to the shade of the brick. So we appreciate your cooperation and Hanson Brick for making that happen, and Ms. Lovelace and the rest of the board for pushing this issue of excellence.
Okay, moving on to Irmo High School. Irmo, we're continuing to work on the main entrance. We have the new main entrance structure that's going up in front of the school. You can see that on the left. It's actually a little bit further. These pictures are about a week and a half old, so particularly in Irmo, as I was walking around this afternoon, it had me wishing that I could put today's pictures in versus a week and a half ago's pictures, but because there has been a lot of progress made at Irmo, particularly in the last week. Now, as of this afternoon, it looks like all the fencing in front of Irmo is going to be able to come down. We have all those private areas complete and safe. So we'll be wrapping up this main entrance structure. We had OSF in on October 2nd to do the overhead inspection in the auditorium building. That went well. So we're continuing to work in the auditorium, working on finishes and trimming out mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. We have stage equipment that's being installed. The seats have arrived. So we're wrapping up some things in the auditorium proper, which you see on the right. There's a bunch of clouds that go in the, they're actually 90% installed as of today. You can't see any in this picture, but those are going in. As soon as those finish, as soon as we get all of those buttoned up, we'll start putting the floor down and getting the seats installed. The stage floor, we have one surface, one final layer that goes on that. That was delivered today, so that should start going down in the next few days. The picture on the right is the lobby, and it actually looks completely different than that picture also today. They have all the lights burning now, and it's a lot cleaner, and it's looking pretty good. Any questions, everybody?
Ms. Lovelace?
It's been a few weeks since I've been there, and I'm really looking forward to getting to go back into the auditorium, so in a week I'll give you a call.
Absolutely.
But in the orchestra pit, can you tell me how many seat the pit will seat?
I can find that out for you. I do not know that off the top of my head.
Because I haven't seen it since we've got the pit, and I
Right.
was just curious to know.
I'll find out and get that information to Keith so he can send it to you.
Okay, I appreciate that so much, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good. Okay, moving on to the new middle school. The new middle school continues to progress well. We've actually got the binder course down on the bus loop and the parking area associated with that drive. We're continuing to work on footings, concentrating. We're probably 95% of all the footings are in now, so we've got footings and slabs going on in the classroom wings primarily, and then masonry going up in some of the larger spaces, the cafeteria, the gym, and those kind of areas. We started setting some steel, as you can see, so that work continues to progress well. No real issues at this time there.
Any questions? I don't think so. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Whitley, appreciate it.
And that concludes the superintendent's report.